Everybody, Tony UV live from Super Rica at the Battery in the ATL with Kofi, my co-host. We are coming live to you, Ep.09 of the Dirty Cybersecurity podcast. Our guest for today, Rafal Lo, distinguished security professional. Our topic for today is business alignment to security programs. We're going to talk about the necessity and importance of aligning security programs to understanding business objectives. We're going to have three parts to this meal today. Kofi, I know you're going to lead us off, but just to kind of let the viewers out there know what they're getting into. First topic is going to be on program alignment. Topic number 2 is going to be on understanding metrics that are important to communicate to business leaders and business stakeholders in an organization. And number 3, we're going to hear from Rafal on aligning managed services as a game changer to evolutionizing your security program. We're live here at the Battery, one of the iconic places in the Atlanta ATL. I'm rocking a Hawks hat because you're doing great. Brave season hasn't started yet, but we're here at Super Rica. Big shout out to them for allowing us to be in their space and record. Also want to do a shout out to Versprite, our sponsor for this podcast, as always, for the food, for the drinks, and for the technology that's allowing us to come to you live or in a recording and talking about this topic. Check out Versprite.com, global cybersecurity firm for your cybersecurity needs. Now, before we get started, Kofi, by the way, great to have you back from Ghana again. We're going to first introduce our distinguished speaker for today, Rafal Lo. Tell us a little bit about your background, your life history. Why should we be listening to you specifically about this topic?
So I spent 25 years in the industry, folks. I've worked for large enterprise. I worked for General Electric for a number of years on the buyer side and program development side. I built one of the first AppSec programs there, and I spent a whole bunch of time on the consulting side, selling security products, managed services, services and professional services, advisory. Went a couple of advisory groups. So I've seen some stuff, as they say. I've seen some shit, done some shit. I may know some shit, probably not though. But you know, the industry tends to take itself a little, depending on who you ask, either too seriously or not seriously enough. So hopefully bring a little bit of that to the conversation here, guys.
Great takes. So set the table for us. Thank you for your background, and definitely I've known you now for a good while, actually since the inception of Versprite. Too long, but appreciate you being with us. Set the table on the necessity for security programs to have a greater understanding on business alignment. What is the need for it, and especially in 2025, because this has been a topic that's been discussed before. Sure. So what's the game changer now?
So, I mean, it's 2025. We've been doing cybersecurity for a bajillion years, right? Yeah. It was what it feels like anyway. Like, we all age in dog years here, but arguably we started somewhere forming? I don't know, whatever. This thing in the mid or late 90s. So it's been going around for 35, almost 40 years. And I think we're at a point where there's a perfect confluence of a bunch of stuff, right? So most companies have established security organizations. They have, no other way to say this, a whole shit ton of security kits. They bought stuff, they've implemented stuff, they borrowed stuff, they built their own stuff. Stuff's everywhere. So staff, technology, they've put some policies in over the years, and their vendors are telling them, hey, if you just buy this one piece of tech, everything will be great. And guess what happens? We all get popped. Everybody gets popped. Sometimes popped repeatedly. Sometimes you get popped while you're getting popped, right? It's awful. And what you're seeing, I think, right now, is the market reacting to, and I'm seeing it in my day job, where security leaders are being asked the question, why another $1 million? Why another piece of technology? Why is the things that we have, and it is a tall stack of things that we've got, why is that not enough? And the answer really, I think, is, largely, I'm not sure, right? We don't know. We've been telling people do the basics for many years. How's that turned out? Not so well, because nobody can do the basics, but we all keep chasing and buying the next shiny box. It's kind of a weird time to be in this industry because I think the phrase is the chickens have come home to roost, right? It's like all the things that we've been saying for the last 25 years have shown up, have come to a point, and it's time to really kind of make good on some of the investments we've requested, the policies we've requested, and some of the other stuff that we try to make happen.
You lay down some powerful facts. I think it's a good segue into Kofi. Kofi, you got some questions prepared as we go into the actual program alignment part. Now, Kofi, you've been in AppSec for a while within major enterprises. What are some of the questions that you have for our friend Rafal with program alignment?
Yeah, so I think you already touched base on some of the, I'll say, not so worked out. So yeah, I think he touched base on some of the things which are not working for now. So my follow-up question would be, how crucial it is then to align business with InfoSecurity? And I know it may sound like, cliche, it's been something that we've been talking about, but just for the sake of those who are watching for the first time, I want to hear from your side.
It's the most important thing because spending aligns to program, aligns to goals and orientation. So you have to know and be confident in the policy that you enact, that it's going towards a purpose that somebody actually cares about, that it makes sense to, right? So knowing what the company does, how it profits, and some of us work for charities, so okay, maybe that's a different thing. How it completes its mission, right? That's a different, same thing, different orientation. But what's the mission? How does it make money, right? What's the most important business processes? What are the things that it can and cannot do without? You take those into account, and you build proportional defenses around those things. So you get to ask questions like, hey, look, we've got $1 million in the budget to really protect everything. It's an infinite amount of money. So maybe there's assets we just go, all right, good luck. It's like you got 4 kids. Which one you got? You got 4 kids, and 2 of them go to college, and 2 of them, hey, make their own way in the world.
Rafal, I gotta ask. So, I mean, I'm a little bit jaded when it comes to this topic because, I think that the majority of security professionals that are out there that have spent over a decade in doing operations haven't cared. They've tried to assimilate to business principles, but they've failed. They've failed on the risk mountaintop to basically because they're always bringing to the topic their own security lens, their own security risk, and not really relating it to business. So I'm one of those. Let me kind of imitate one of those C-levels that are like, listen, I hear what you're saying. It sounds beautiful, but I don't really believe that the overall industry that you are a part of actually is well versed to ever be at least have a level of conversational business skills that are gonna actually align to the business from your security program. What do you say to that?
I say you're probably, well, you're half right. There's a hierarchy to this, right? The leadership needs to know, your CISO, whoever your security program lead is, the executive, if they are in fact an executive, needs to understand the business aspects of what they're doing. It's a must. If you don't, you're in the wrong job. This is why it's so difficult for technologists to step up and say, I've been manning a SIM for the last 5 years. Hey, I can be a CISO. Yet you have to understand the fundamentals of business, how money works, right? A depreciation works, what risks are. Because I've said this a million times. If you guys have heard me on a podcast, we talk about the Inigo Montoya problem. You keep saying that word, and I mean risk. And I don't think it means what you think it means, right? What is a business risk? We have operational, legal, supply chain risks. Hey, can the company be, enjoined from operating in the country? Do they have political risk? Do they have strategic risk, operational risk, right? Security is not one of the risk types, but it contributes to all 7 of those categories.
Let me jump in and ask this question. So you've been made CISO for a company now in 2025. you want to achieve program alignment and do everything that you're advocating right now, what do you do in your first 30 days in order to achieve program alignment? What do you do in your next 60 days? What do you do in 180? Go.
That's kind of funny. 2 episodes from now, I've got an episode on my show. We're talking about the first 90 days. So I'll tell you with more confidence in a little bit. But when I look at it, if I was taking the reins of a new CISO org, what I would look really quickly at is key business objectives, short-term, long-term plan. What's the company trying to achieve? If you work in a hospital, there's always a mission statement somewhere from your top executive. We want to increase the rate of survival in our emergency room. We want to cure patients 30 seconds faster. I don't know, whatever that is, right? Increase people's lives, that kind of thing. But you want concrete metrics, and then you look at it and go, okay, if I work for a shipping company, we want to ship more containers this year than last year. We want to have less loss. We want to have less things that are lost in the system. Great. How can I do that? What does cyber contribute to that? And then once you've answered those questions, you go, okay, great. What are the pieces of the business that now contribute to that? Oh, the crane operators. Oh, the systems that do all the logistics on the back end. Boy, we should probably have an AppSec program so we develop all of our own code. Hey, by the way, each of those ships, each of those trucks, containers has a tracker on it. We got to make sure that that data doesn't get corrupted, doesn't get manipulated and stolen by our competition or whoever, right? So you start with what are we doing here from a business perspective, and then you get down to what do I do to contribute to that, and then you can implement all manner of, okay, well, I've got a firewall I've been paying for. Do I keep it or do I get rid of it? Well, what does it contribute to? Right? If it contributes to a couple of things, yeah, it stays. I've got, this one thing that I bought. Okay, well, it's kind of a nice to have, but, does it contribute to anything, right? Is it core to anything? And that's how, in my career, I've been able to go back and say to people, hey, you're overspending. And the salespeople I work with always hated that. But there's a point at which you spend more than the value that you are protecting. And if you don't know roughly where that is, you're in for a whole world of pain.
And I think, yeah, if I can, add into what he said, and we've talked about this before. In fact, I did bring up a specific example about why sometimes we have a whole bunch of tools, and they really don't add anything or little value, and we still keep holding on to it. I'm from offset in general. Okay, I do manage a team, in the offset program. And one of the things that yearly I do get from leadership is giving the list of the tools your team needs for their work.
Yep.
And they are, from what they've seen from the market, they want me to give this whatever ranking tools, expensive tools, and stuff like that as my, need to have tools. And I'll tell them, I just want us to get open source tools, for instance, right? Or I'll go with the tools that my team feels much more efficient and effective using them. And they are so surprised to see me not listing some of these expensive tools that, well, we saw this on, I don't mean to mention any names, but we saw this on being on this corner of whatever, and it's their shit, right? And I was like, no, my team just wants to use these tools for what we do right now. Yeah. And if I need to have these tools in the future, as and when they become needed, then I'll have you guys buy for me. So just to add to your point, we have a whole bunch of some tools within the organization that they don't add much value, and we keep holding on because we understand the business, what it does, and how it does contribute to its objective.
I'll follow up to that. I did a consulting engagement that I've used as an example a long time ago, and it's so emblematic. I went in with a company. They had a director of security, a small team. They had a couple of people in, and they were trying to figure out is the security program aligned to the company mission. I got everybody under the CISO in a room, And in a separate room, I got everybody under the CIO in a room, right? It's not security people, it's security people. I asked the security people, we're going to put it on the board. What does the company do, or what are its critical assets? They gave me a list. Then I sat the business, the non-security people down, asked them the same question. They gave me a different list of assets. Then I brought in like the line of business executives and said, hey, how much of this is true? They all looked at it and go, what the hell is that stuff? Like, none of those things matter to us.
Yeah, so just to kind of put a book, because we want to move on to the metrics really quick. My quick takes is that U.S.-based businesses that have security programs are oftentimes swayed by a lot of marketing. They're looking to solve a problem quickly with a pill, which the pill is a metaphor for the security tool. Separate to that, to your point, Rafal, we always say at Versprite, if you're going to be a Versprite consultant, you have to understand how your client makes money. And I think that's a good adage for any security professional. You want to start as an enterprise security professional at any organization. I don't care if it's PepsiCo, manufacturing. I don't care if it's retail, financial. Do you understand how your customer makes money? And to the example that you provided, right? You asked 2 different lists from 2 different demographics of groups, and they had basically a different list. It clearly shows that there's no disconnect, and that's a great, I think, really kind of a takeaway or kind of an endpoint to the first topic of program alignment. Today we have a problem. Those that are listening today have an opportunity to be able to understand how you, in knowing what you do with security, can align to the objectives, the business, the mission, the use cases of the products that you are representing. Now let's move over to metrics real quick. Do you have any, you want to lead off on the metrics one? I got some metrics that, all right, metrics. Metrics, I hate and love it. I love it for the fact that if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. That's a cliche out there. We know it, sure. Right? So when it comes to security, I'll just go ahead and say the obvious. I don't think that there are security metrics that are persistent across different industries or even in one industry that are used as a measuring stick. I think the metrics that we have are like time to close. When it comes to remediation, I think there's some metrics that are useless in addition to that are like time to identify or time of discovery when it relates to a security incident. Some types of incidents or events, for the most part, metrics, I think we have are trash. And so the question I have for you openly is like, what are good metrics, Rafal?
So okay, this is going to shock absolutely nobody, but there's not a single metric that you can use across the entire organization. Here's how you do this: you build. Either you can start from bottom up or go top down. I like top down better. It helps me think a bit differently. So say let's take the shipping company example I gave. They want to be able to have let's say a goal of transact 20%. That's a lot of number. 5% more business this year. Okay, well how? Well, we can do that by saying, hey, maybe less downtime, right? Less unplanned downtime. All right, well, how does security contribute to unplanned downtime? Give me 3 ways. So, okay, let's write down 3 ways. We keep bad guys out, right? Or girls, people, things, bad things out. And that is something we can do. Okay, great. We test our patching to make sure that we don't patch in production and break that crap. And I don't know, some third thing. Okay, well, so let's take it next level down. Let's take that patch in production problem. So how much downtime have we as the business seen as a result of IT issues? I can measure that. I can tell you that, right? So how do we decrease? Now you go, okay, how do I decrease that as security for people? Well, we're going to need some things. A test bed. We're going to need better, what increases the number of unplanned downtime you have. Assets you don't know exist until they blow up. Great. Asset discovery and classification, asset tracking. Well, what about in an IoT world? I can't do that. You sure can, right? There's tech for that. Okay, so now I've got that. Great. So now I've got, now I can ask, say, how many assets do I know are known versus unknown? What is my time to discover a new asset? How long does an asset live on my network before I know before I can classify it, know where it is and what it is? So now I've got those metrics. You go, all right, well, how do I support that next level down? Do I have a scanner in every environment? Do I have on the wire NDR type of stuff? whatever technology you want to put in there. So now you can start at the main problem you're trying to solve, or maybe it's not a problem, the thing you're trying to support, and you work your levels down until you get to something.
Well, I will say, welcome to the Dirty South Security Podcast, because this is about to get very adversarial. So I will actually,
Let's go.
so everything that you mentioned is from the lens of a security practitioner. Like, I'm imagining myself as the business stakeholder, the product stakeholder, and I'm like, I don't freaking care anything you just said, because number one, first of all, I think we need an anchor. The anchor point or the cornerstone is of the CIA triad, which is a security type of rendering, right? What actually aligns to the business? You talk about uptime. You talk about availability. Maybe the business doesn't even care. We have to ask ourselves a question as security professionals: is availability something that's aligned to the business? Maybe it's integrity. Maybe it's confidentiality. Maybe it's something else. I think that the majority of security metrics that are out there have been done by security professionals, and they're absolutely garbage. Because they're just meant for us to be able to pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, we're doing a good job in the eyes of who? Ourselves. That's like the Academy Awards.
Yeah. Or the Grammys.
Or the Grammys, right?
And I'll just jump in real quick on that. So the metrics is where I say I have I'm torn in that when anyone asks me about metrics, show me what your OSSEC team is doing, and give me numbers. It's always hard for me to. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, right? But going back to what you said, we operate in an industry where the people that we're trying to emulate are difficult to track what they're doing and how they're causing all those things to us. What he said is right. And in fact, I was on the same line with you, because from the past, we've always played that scare tactics for leadership. If you don't do this,
Well,
there will be a breach.
Right?
Yes. If you don't do this, there will be a breach, and then that's what happened to you. So, and I think we have to move away from that scare tactics and then talk about, if we don't do this, there could be a downtime, which can lead into trust issue with your customers. That can lead into losing XYZ revenue. So I think if we're able to reword it as, instead of scaring leadership and telling them how that can impact the business bottom line, then I think we're doing something good. Instead of giving numbers, hardcore numbers.
So you look at board level metrics. What does the company care? Like, what does the company care about, right? And if we said, okay, shipping 5% increase in shipping, that's great. Then you're not going to look. I am convinced that there are very few CISOs that stand in front of a board and say, here are 3 metrics that you should care about. And then the board goes, that's awesome. That's amazing. And they actually care. I think most of them look at it and go, that's some scary numbers. I think I should nod now, right? Because it looks bad. It numbers up, bad. Trend down, good, right? But look, ultimately what security is here for is to enable whatever it is the company does, whatever it is the organization does. And if you know the organization's goals, which is some concrete thing that you're going to increase or decrease by some concrete percentage, it is an imperative that the security executive find a way to draw a bridge between that metric that the board cares about, that's probably a KPI, frankly, and the metrics that you present, right? And you will aggregate many things like time to respond.
Let's do a live case study right now. Netflix. We all work at Netflix right now. And I just picked Netflix haphazardly. There's a couple screens on the restaurant here. We all work at Netflix.
Sure.
Netflix, number one thing is what? It's uptime. It's subscriptions. Yeah. So you have that.
Not during the Tyson fight, though.
It doesn't matter. Like in general, overall, they want great content. Every content to have a great following. They want uptime. Netflix down. You mean you have no subscribers they're gonna go to Hulu.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we get that. So uptime is king. We get that, right? All right. Uptime is king. We also have confidentiality issues. Is confidentiality bigger than uptime from an executive standpoint? No.
I'm gonna guess no.
Yeah, exactly. Because uptime is what's paying all the executives out there. Uptime and content originality. Now the other thing is integrity or confidentiality of the content. What happens if you have a new pilot coming out that has the best actors that are like the latest? I don't know who's hot right now, but it's got like all the hottest actors, and it's a new pilot, and it gets out, it gets leaked. That's bad, right?
Could be, or it could be some great PR.
I'm gonna guess that it's bad.
In this current world, it's difficult to tell. It could be a PR thing.
You're telling me if there's a new Call of Duty like 25 that comes out, and they're fighting in freaking Saturn, okay, and there's like topographical maps in Saturn, and that gets leaked out, that's actually good? I mean,
Listen, you get people excited about the next new thing coming out.
well, what happens if you get the competitor to Call of Duty to roll out and emulate that, and they offer it on the cheap? I'm looking at it from a business
Now you're
sense.
talking about pricing. That's different, right?
Yeah, so
Pricing is fungible.
So this security program out there, Dirty South Security listeners, already has some level of, non-coherent, different thoughts, which is good. This is what we do, right? This is what we're doing. Because some of it is like, hey, there's a leak, then okay, well, then if someone comes to us as a security professional, hey, by the way, your lack of security leaked the latest, Netflix out, new pilot, then what are we going to retort to them? I'm not going to retort to them and say, hey, you know what, that could be a good thing for marketing. Because then I'll just point to Rafal, who's like, he thinks this is a good thing for marketing, and then I will have a job, and then he will have a job.
But you see, you are speaking from the standpoint of an outsider. What if it is still marketing stuff? Because what if that content being leaked doesn't really add too much, it's not too much for this company for them to consume that kind of like cost, but for a greater good, for maybe an absolute bigger.
Guys, we're asking the wrong question. When we say what does Netflix care about, they care about uptime. I would guess that confidentiality of their pilots and stuff is fairly far below uptime.
I'm just enumerating things that they would care about. I mean, in the 5 minutes that we're trying to emulate this case study, if you will, on the fly, we're not going to basically come up with a robust list that's 100% accurate. But we can agree with continuity, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the reason I bring in the confidentiality of palettes is because there's been a precedence of it, especially in gaming, which is content is content. Digital content in the gaming world versus like in the TV world, if something gets leaked, then the whole romance of it, right, gets out there, and
Let me give you a true life story.
Yeah.
And this is coming from one of my past lives, okay? My team does a pen test for a particular product, right? We did a pen test on a product, and then the team realized that we could actually get the product license on our own, generate like a whole bunch of them, and then just use without signing up and paying for it. Okay. So of course, to us, we thought that was a bigger issue finding, right? So we go to the client and tell the client, listen, we were able to create our own license key using this, whatever it is, and we can just pass them around and then just have fun with it. And to our surprise, they didn't care. They did not. And this was
what was the business model of the company?
Exactly. So if we don't understand the business model, we may think that a leak is a leak and it's supposed to be
alignment.
Yeah. So for them, they thought you know what? It doesn't matter how many of this tool is bootlegged or whatever it is. It doesn't hit. It doesn't cause damage to our bottom line.
It goes back to my point that you got to know what your client does and how they make money.
That's the whole point here is you align the program, you figure out what the program's going to do, you create KPIs and metrics that align to that, and then somewhere down, so those are for the leadership that we're talking about. You will also have metrics for your individual departments. You'll have metrics for your security operations, whether you call it the SOC or not. For your operators, you're going to have metrics like time to respond. You're going to have metrics to dwell time for some people that measure that kind of thing. You're going to have all kinds of things, right, that measure the efficacy of the tools, the efficacy of the staff, the efficacy of your processes. And then there's a step between that and the executive stuff, which is how do those two relate? Because they do, well, you've done something wrong.
100%. Closing thoughts on metrics. We got to get to the final point and get out of here. So closing points on metrics, go.
Closing points on
30
metrics.
seconds or less.
30 seconds or less. Here we go. If you're designing a metrics program, start with the KPIs that your business cares about. Figure out how to support those things, and then build a 3-tiered structure on the way down. How does something I do support that? Next step down. So how does some operational things support that. And then the last step at the very bottom, am I getting better or worse at it? Period.
Okay, my takeaways, two things. One, understand how your client makes money. What is important to them in the CIA traditional triad, add 2 C's and I'll get to that. Confidentiality, integrity, availability. Also add on compliance, because if you are having a product that's go-to-market strategy and you don't clear like FDA requirements, you're not going to market. You're not going to market.
Fair.
The last one is connectivity, because in this day and age, you might have something that doesn't have any regulated PII, personal information, or sensitive data, or even sensitive content. You might not even care about uptime, but your product is interconnected to like so many other products, and you could have the threat of persistence that could ruin reputation, it could ruin availability, it could ruin a lot of different things. So overall, take 2 points is, number one, understand how your client makes money. Number two, align it to the CIACC. Last 2 letters are compliance and connectivity. Kofi, you.
Now, what am I supposed to say? You guys have said it all.
Well, you can agree or disagree.
Mike?
No, I agree to most of them, but I think what I'll add into it is I think leadership sometimes have a mistake of thinking that metrics is supposed to be same across multiple departments, right?
Yeah.
So they'll give you this, template from accounting. This is how accounting, have their matrix, fill out the blanks for InfoSec or offset. No, it doesn't work that way, right? So you have to understand that our line of work is different from other departments. So if you're trying to craft a matrix for InfoSec, understand the business, as you're saying, is case-by-case basis. Just because legal, GRC, accounting, finance, whatever, had these, template for metric doesn't mean that offset's supposed to have the same set.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a hot take right there. Final area, managed services. Rafal, this is an area at the time, which 2025, as you corrected me, right? I forgot we're there already. Managed services. It's been around for a long time, but there's a lot of, the state of security is that there's not enough people, not enough resources, not enough money. It's an opportune time for managed services to thrive and establish relationships with companies. What makes a good and what makes a bad managed service?
I'm going to correct you again, since this is what you wanted to do. I don't think that there's. I think that like the whole not enough people, not enough money thing is not going to be applied to everything, right? If I tell my kids there's not enough time, there's not enough money to get all the toys they want. The reality is we have budgets. I don't think anybody's sitting in a security company that has no budget. I think what we have to think about is, where do you want to spend the money you're getting? And I think the place that you want to, let's say, create some efficiencies based on an economy of scale is in your security operations. Now, assuming that security operations is not the security help desk department, right? So let's take that as a given, that you're actually doing things like detection, response, you're hunting threats, you're engineering and designing things in the moment, right, to go counteract and mitigate threats. I think the reason that time for that is now, and why the managed services in the past have failed, because managed services of the past 20 years have all sucked for the same reason. It's your mess for less, all day, right? Why did managed services become a thing? Because initially we said, hey, we're going to look at the aggregate of all the stuff happening across all of our customers, and we'll bring that knowledge to you in an effective way at a lower price. Well, what it turned into was, I'm going to watch your SIM, and when an alert pops, I'm going to put it in an email and send it to you and to go do something with. Like, I can do that myself. Why am I paying somebody else to do it? That's neither efficient nor less costly. Nor is it any, I think.
I will disagree with you on costly. It is much more costly to have FTEs internally with benefits and compensation and everything than to basically pay an outside managed service firm globally with globalization today.
To you anyway, is the point, right?
It depends on the structure, whether you have first degree, second degree.
We can argue semantics.
So I think that's where your pros and cons about that comes in, is if you have a proper managed service in place, and the SLAs are well defined, then if you see an alert about my environment, why should you have to come back to me to fix it, right? So that means there hasn't been proper, like a do defined services between the client and the MSP.
Okay, so I'll ask you both. I mean, hasn't the traditional MSSP though been like, you tell me what's on fire, and then I'm gonna fix it because I'm not gonna give you the keys to the kingdom.
No,
That's what it.
that is theoretical.
That's how it was sold. That's
Right.
not what it was. Because what ends up happening is we built the efficiencies around aggregating yellow, orange, and red alerts, critical highs, mediums, and the way we got efficiency is by trusting what the vendor or the SIM told you, and you tuned the SIM. That's not really what we wanted. What we wanted is we wanted to be able to scale the human brain across multiple companies, right? So
Architect your ideal like managed service model. Go.
So the ideal managed service, it exists, and I've got a partner that does that right now for me. It exists because what we have is a managed service provider that can either supplant or support your existing security operations organization. So if you're going to supplant it, they'll do everything from manage, take in all the alerts, manage the devices, create the efficiencies, the tuning, the creating new detection engineering, all that kind of stuff, monitoring and responding, and then there are things that they'll say
managing the devices.
Managing the devices.
So that's definitely that's more IT operations, by the way. But go ahead.
Sure, but you're looking at a complete. Well, I call it a kind of a complete solution because.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just trying to say that is what that is, right?
Right. It's not quite ideal because you're adding.
When you're managing software and endpoints at permissions level, like configuration, hardening, imaging, you're doing IT operations, yes.
All right, fine. But I think if you're going to look at it from a security perspective, I look at it and say, you've picked a technology stack. I buy security as a service. So I say, listen, I have to have compliance stealth, I have to have endpoint tools, I have to have some sort of detective abilities, I have to have fast response time. Can I buy that from you? And I as the MSSP say, yes. I give you my tool stack. So I have expertise in the most popular, CrowdStrike. I have, Sentinel or any number of different SIMs on the back end or data lakes or whatnot. I have these NDR solutions. So I can create this package. There's the things that I know, the things I'm good at using. I will put it into your environment, well-tuned, well-orchestrated, understood, and then I can do everything from that base level of understanding and management all the way to the point where I say, I saw an alert, I correlated it with a bunch of others, we investigated, we triaged. That's a no shit moment. Here's a package that complete with my recommendation that goes to your people that says, here's what you need to do right now. I've just now saved you a ton of money and time. And by the way, you don't need that. That should not be happening every day, all day. And if it is, you've got bigger problems, right? That should be an alert you get every other day, once a week, maybe, if you're doing it right, if you've got enough security in place. And those guys do a tremendously good job. Now, if you want to support your existing security operations, what you get to is we'll do the base level of triage and understanding. We'll do detection engineering. We'll do tuning. And then when we find something interesting, we'll call your people up and go, hey, I don't know your environment of 4 million endpoints well enough to say, that to me, that looks weird. Is that really weird? Does that device actually do that? Because I don't know that, right?
Yeah. Kofi, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, he makes a great point on that. And coming from, again, my standpoint as an offset where I have done some stuff, my team has done some stuff, and then been working with MSPs because the client wouldn't have a good amount of FTEs to support that. That makes sense. I have also seen a poorly implemented MSP where basically, like what he said, they call us or they saw some of our activities and then just send an email over to the client. Well, we just found this, we saw this, go fix it, or how do you want to handle that, right? So it goes back and forth on how do you sit down with your MSPs and they draw the line on what they are capable of doing, what they're supposed to do, and then when it happens, are they doing it? Than just like on paper.
Yes, one of the things I liked about what you said is supplanting or really kind of aligning with existing operations, because some MSSPs are out there to supplant internal operations. Others are there to complement and offer like first degree response, second degree response. It just depends on the budget of the actual enterprise selecting that MSSP. One thing I'll say that is net new to what you guys put down that wasn't mentioned was I look at MSSPs today, and one of the things that they do very poorly is on tuning. The majority of MSSPs, in my opinion, they rack and stack. They're I don't mean to sound pejorative, but they're blue collar security professionals that rack and stack. They rack and stack, say, hey, your cable modem's working, you have internet, I'm out the door, right? And they're just going to basically be looking at what's happening on their screen, and if there's no alerts that are popping off, they're going to go back to surfing the internet, playing Doom, playing Call of Duty, whatever. I've worked all the 3 shifts of a SOC operation, so I've seen it absolutely all, and I'm leading out the rated X stuff that's typically happens in SOC operations and MSP. The other thing that I think, isn't talked about very often is automation, especially like we're in 2025, all right? Like if you don't have an MSSP that is not developing automation, you have the wrong MSSP 100%, no doubt for today. So don't even talk to them, because the majority of status quo MSSPs today are just like, let me hear what the Gartner #1 quadrant type of solution is saying of what's on fire in my environment, and let me put on the fire hat and just pick up the phone and let my customer know what's wrong. If I have permissions and I've been given awarded to mitigate that, I might go in there and put out the fire. But what most MSSPs that are worth their money and gold is going to be thinking about, how can I automate this so that there is automated response, automated remediation, automated mitigation that understands that automation doesn't deprecate functionality that's important to the business, going back to business alignment.
You have to be careful what you automate, because as one of my recent guests told me on the show, is that if you're not automating good processes, you're just automating the mess, making the mess come faster. I really think that that's actually a really interesting thing to think about. So ultimately there's 2 ways MSSPs screw up. They either create a completely bespoke solution that is not repeatable, so you need a long-term contract, right? So that's Accenture is the big ones in the world. There's the other way, which is super cookie cutter. Everybody gets the same thing. You like it or this is what you get. You can get black or black, as Henry Ford once said, and you'll love it. And that's how you get cost efficiency. Now, that's why I said MSSPs may not always be the cheaper option in terms of if you're trying to just purely save cost. But if you're just purely trying to save cost, I think you're kind of missing the point, which is an entirely different conversation. I think the time for efficient, effective managed service providers is right now, because of the purely, if for absolutely no other reason, then we simply don't have we don't live in an environment where every organization can fend for themselves effectively. We can't. We look around and we see it every single day.
But the closing points on managed services, go.
Yeah, so I think I want to throw it out that we are not lashing at the fact that having a managed service provider is a bad thing. We're trying to let our viewers understand how to pick the right one and a bad one, and so we're sharing our opinion on the fact that these are some of the features or characteristics of a good MSSP and not so well one. And I think that is what I want to bring out, so that we don't get people confused about the discussion, because sometimes you can misunderstand what you're talking about here. So yeah, I think we said it all, and I said it. I've seen both sides of the coin. I've seen really good ones where they are involved in the entire life cycle of risk detection all the way through to remediation or eradication. And I've seen people, I've seen some which just throws out an email to the client to just have them to go deal with it. So again, I'm just saying, I think I don't have much to say besides what you guys have said, because I think we're on the same page on that.
Rafal, final thoughts on managed services?
I think you probably need one. I think if you pick, you have to be careful about what you pick, and all three of these topics are really, really the same conversation, because your security has to align with the business. And if your business is not security, then things like operations may be good to outsource. And then you got to measure it correctly, not just the parts of your security that program that align to the business and how well it's aligned, but also how well is your MSSP doing. That feeds into your metrics and KPIs and feeds into reporting, helps with alignment. I think all these things are part and parcel of the same thing.
My final thoughts are, right now, 2025, there is a greater demand for efficiency. With that, you have a cybersecurity talent pool that is a lot more competitive, a lot more scarce in terms of veteranship, in terms of like actual experience in operations. And so it makes sense in some instances to be able to lean on a managed service provider, where you're not going to have that to be germane to your operations. If you don't have the tools or the people to do, for example, vuln management, it makes sense to have a managed service provider to do vuln management for you. So that makes sense. Now, the game changers in 2025 are going to come down to those that are going to be looking to not just make the donuts per se, where it's just like they fire up a vuln scanner, click on the scan button, and then fork over a report from the scanning tool without trying to correlate results to the environment that they are scanning, understanding what's in my DMZ or what's in the client DMZ, what's in the internal network, what is that network for, is it regulated, is it not regulated, is it mission critical, all those sort of things. That makes the difference with a good versus bad MSSP. There's a lot of bad MSSPs, and I'm not trying to basically say that, listen, everyone out there listening to the podcast, they drive a certain car. Maybe they stick to a certain flavor of engineering, maybe German engineering, maybe American engineering, maybe Japanese engineering, and they usually stick to it. There's a lot of different flavors of MSSPs. You got to find the one that aligns to your particular taste as a business. But I think the game changers going into the next, few years, especially in this age of AI, is that you have to have an MSSP that understands data, that looks at the historical data of, going back to the examples of vulnerabilities, what is the historical vulnerabilities that's affected the organization? How do you institute some levels of automation where a vulnerability that historically has been 99% true positive can actually lend to some level of automation for automatic remediation? The data will allow the MSSP to make smart decisions that are tactful and that are not going to basically be, affecting the functionality of the company. This is episode 9 of the Dirty South Security Podcast. I'm super excited to have shared the mic with Rafal Lo, and as always, Kofi. Great to have you back from Ghana. And until next time, everybody.